in a neighborhood where every blade of grass was measured, every flower approved, and every curtain shade scrutinized. The appearance of a brand new pool without their direct blessing was nothing short of a declaration of war. To them, the pool wasn't just an amenity, it was an act of rebellion, a symbol that someone had dared to move forward without kneeling before their authority. The HOA president, Marjorie, was the first to notice. She was infamous in the community, her clipboard practically glued to her hand, her oversized sunglasses hiding the glare of eyes that missed nothing. She circled the cul-de-sac like a hawk, her heels clicking against the pavement, her lips pursed tight enough to leave permanent lines. To Marjorie, the pool was chaos, and chaos had no place in her suburban empire. Whispers began almost immediately. By the mailbox, by the dog park, at the corner cafe, where residents traded gossip like currency. Some said the pool was too close to the property line. Others claimed it violated the color scheme of the neighborhood, as if water itself needed HOA approval. But the loudest rumor was that no permit had ever been filed. That was all Marjorie needed to call an emergency HOA board meeting. The minutes were written with the kind of sharp strokes that cut deeper than words. Unauthorized construction. Unsanctioned pool. Violation of HOA standards. By the next morning, the notice was ready. A bright envelope, red ink stamped across its face, like a scarlet letter, taped to the front door. The message was simple. Remove the pool immediately, or face fines starting at $250 a day, escalating into thousands by the month. The pool, they said, was a blight on the community. The pool was illegal. The pool had to go. But behind the accusation lay a truth Marjorie hadn't considered. Because while the HOA might control the fences, the lawns, the paint colors, and even the height of the hedges, there was one thing they had no say over. One thing that had been quietly, meticulously taken care of long before the first shovel hit the dirt. The pool permit, hadn't just been approved, it had been signed, stamped, and finalized by the county office itself. And the name on that permit wasn't some faceless contractor, nor a desperate neighbor begging for permission. It was my name. Bold, permanent, undeniable. I was not just the homeowner. I was the authority. The HOA didn't know it yet, but their power had just collided, headfirst with the one thing stronger than their endless rules. The law. And when the battle lines were drawn, it wasn't just about a pool anymore. It was about who truly owned this neighborhood. As the sun set on that first day, the water glowed golden. Defiance under the evening light, while Marjorie's notice flapped against my door in the breeze like a challenge waiting to be answered. The HOA thought this was the beginning of the end for my pool, but they had no idea it was the beginning of the end for them. By morning, the story of the pool had already spread beyond the cul-de-sac. Neighbors lingered longer at their driveways, pretending to water plants or collect mail, just to sneak a glance at the forbidden blue water shimmering under the sun. But the brightest sight wasn't the pool. It was the red HOA violation notice still plastered on my door. Marjorie had placed it with such force that the tape nearly tore the paint. She wanted the entire neighborhood to see it, to mark me as an example. Her plan was simple. Shame me into compliance. But shaming doesn't work when you've done nothing wrong. As I stood on the porch, the notice fluttered with every breeze, loud in its silence. It declared fines, threats, and the ultimate command: tear the pool down. Yet beneath all that noise, it was missing the one thing that mattered most. Authority. The HOA had authority over lawns, fences, even the color of a mailbox. But the pool was not theirs to command. The county had already decided, and they had decided in my favor. The permit wasn't just paperwork, it was protection, a shield carved into law. And that shield carried my signature. Still, Marjorie wasn't about to let go. She thrived on power, and the thought of someone bypassing her rule was unbearable. By noon, a second notice appeared, thicker, more official looking, written as if it came straight from a courtroom. But anyone who knew the difference could tell it was nothing more than HOA, stationery, dressed up like law. Bold words, empty threats. She even tried intimidation. During her daily patrols, she would stop directly in front of the pool, her sunglasses reflecting the ripples of water like mirrors. She stood there, scribbling in her clipboard, whispering into her phone. Neighbors watched her with nervous glances, as if siding with me could put them next on her list. But I didn't back down. I didn't remove the notices. I didn't cover the pool. I let the water shine louder than her words, because I knew something she didn't tee. Every attempt she made to find me would crumble the moment it hit the county office. And crumble it did. The first fine notice came tucked into my mailbox, stamped with a penalty of $500. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I simply mailed back a copy of my signed permit attached to a short letter. Not one of anger, but of fact. By the end of the week, the fine vanished like it never existed. The HOA tried again with a larger threat, $1,000 for continued violation. Again, I responded with the same document. Again, it disappeared. Each attempt made Marjorie's frustration grow. Her control was slipping, and worse, everyone could see it. The other board members, once loyal to her iron rule, now looked uneasy during their meetings. They had built their power on fear of fines. But if those fines couldn't stand against a single sheet of paper with my name on it, then what else could they control? The neighborhood began to whisper a new rumor. Not about me, but about Marjorie, that maybe she wasn't as powerful as she claimed, that maybe her clipboard wasn't law, just paper, and that maybe, just maybe, one pool had exposed the truth. The HOA's power wasn't real, it only worked if people believed it. And my pool was proof that belief could break. But Marjorie wasn't done. If she couldn't win through fines, she would escalate. She would gather her allies, stir fear among the residents, and paint me as the villain who threatened the community's peace. The notices were just the beginning. The real battle was about to begin. And as the sun set once more, my pool glowed not as a luxury, but as a symbol. To me, it was water and light. To the HOA, it was rebellion. The next chapter of this fight wouldn't be about money, it would be about control. The notices had failed. The fines had collapsed. The HOAS weapons, once sharp and feared, now lay useless against the weight of a single county permit. For most people, that would have been the end. But not for Marjorie. She thrived on control. And when her grip began to loosen, she didn't retreat, she tightened harder. If she couldn't tear down the pool with paper and ink, she would tear me down with whispers and fear. It began with the newsletter. Every month, the HOA mailed a printed bulletin to every household, filled with reminders about lawn care, community events, and updates on dues. But this issue carried something different. Between cheerful notes about block parties and safety tips for Halloween, a long column appeared in bold letters. Unauthorized structures. A threat to our community. The article never mentioned my name, but it didn't have to. Everyone knew who it was about. It warned of reckless construction, of homeowners who bypassed procedure, of dangers to property values. It painted the pool not as a luxury, but as a hazard, a stain on the neighborhood's perfect image. Neighbors began to glance differently. Some avoided eye contact as they walked their dogs past my home. Others stood at the end of their driveways, whispering as the water shimmered just beyond the fence. The seed of doubt had been planted. But Marjorie didn't stop at newsletters. She weaponized fear at board meetings, rallying her allies with speeches about safety risks. She claimed the pool was a danger to children, a liability that could result in lawsuits for the entire neighborhood. She talked about drowning hazards, broken fences, unapproved chemicals in the water. Every word was designed not to inform, but to inflame. And slowly, it worked. Some neighbors began signing petitions, slipped under doors, and left in mailboxes. They weren't written by Marjorie directly. She was too clever for that, but the language was the same, dripping with her influence. Protect our community. Remove the unauthorized pool. Still, I didn't move. I didn't cover the water. I didn't drain it, because every smear, every rumor, every word against me was built on the same fragile foundation as before. Lies. And lies collapse under truth. So I waited, and as I waited, cracks began to show, not in my resolve, but in hers, because not everyone bought into her narrative. Some neighbors remembered the facts. Some had seen the permit themselves, posted proudly on my fence when construction began. Some were tired of Marjorie's rule, tired of being told what color their door could be, how high their grass should stand, whether or not they could plant roses in their own soil. To them, my pool wasn't a threat. It was hope. Hope that maybe the HOA didn't have as much power as they claimed. Hope that maybe one person could stand up and win. And that hope began to spread. Quietly, at first, a nod from across the street, a smile from a neighbor walking past, a whispered "good for you" when no one else was listening. The smear campaign was powerful, but it wasn't perfect. It had begun to backfire, and that terrified Marjorie more than anything else. Because once people realized the HOA couldn't tear down my pool, they might begin to wonder what else the HOA couldn't control. The balance of power was shifting. My pool wasn't just water anymore. It was a mirror reflecting every fear, every rule, every false claim that HOA had ever made. And soon, that reflection was going to blind them. By now, the pool had become more than just water, and Tylet was the neighborhood's battleground. Each ripple felt like a challenge. Each reflection of the sun, a reminder that Marjorie's grip was slipping. The smear campaign hadn't broken me. The petitions hadn't scared me. And whispers, no matter how loud, couldn't drain a pool that stood on the side of law. So Marjorie changed tactics. When control through fear failed, she turned to control through force. Not physical force, but legal. It began with a letter. This time, not on HOA stationery, but on the letterhead of a local law firm. The envelope was heavy. Its seal meant to intimidate. Inside, page after page accused me of violating covenants, endangering property values, and breaching community trust. It demanded immediate removal of the pool and threatened a lawsuit if I refused. The letter was sharp, designed to scare the average homeowner into obedience, but it carried one fatal flaw, the same flaw as every notice before. It was built on HOA rules, not county law, and where county law stood, I stood taller. Still, Marjorie wasn't finished. She pulled her final card. County inspectors. One quiet afternoon, a white truck pulled into the cul-de-sac. Two men stepped out, clipboards in hand, reflective vests catching the sun. Neighbors gathered at windows and sidewalks, watching the scene unfold like a courtroom brought to their front yards. Marjorie strutted beside them, her sunglasses flashing with victory, her clipboard clutched like a sword. The inspectors approached the pool, measuring, checking, jotting down notes. Marjorie hovered at their sides, her smile wide as she imagined the outcome. She wanted them to declare the pool illegal, unsafe, unapproved. She wanted her word validated by theirs. But what she didn't know, what she never cared to check, was that these same inspectors had already been here months ago. They were the ones who approved the plans. They were the ones who walked the foundation, checked the wiring, tested the drains. Their signatures were already on the permit. And when they flipped through their files and found the document again, their expressions didn't harden with disapproval. They softened with recognition. The permit was clear. The pool was legal. The name signed across the bottom wasn't just anyone's, it was mine. In that moment, the balance shifted. Marjorie's smile faltered. Her clipboard lowered. The inspectors, polite but firm, told her the truth she had been avoiding all along. The pool met every requirement, every safety standard, every law. The county had spoken long before she ever raised her voice. And nothing she said, nothing she wrote, nothing she threatened could erase that. The crowd of neighbors, watching from sidewalks and driveways, saw it too. They saw Marjorie's power crumble in real time. They saw the mighty HOA president, once untouchable, standing silent as county law, cut her down with facts. For the first time, Marjorie wasn't in control, but her silence didn't mean surrender. Because people like Marjorie never stop. When one weapon fails, they simply sharpen another. And though her attempt with inspectors had backfired, she wasn't finished. She couldn't be. Too much of her identity was wrapped in control. Too much of her pride hinged on victory. She would find another way. And when she did, the fight would move beyond pools and permits. It would reach into the heart of the neighborhood itself. The war wasn't over. It was only changing shape. The inspector's verdict echoed louder than any whisper, louder than any newsletter or fine. The pool was legal. The pool was safe. The pool was untouchable. And with that, Marjorie's carefully built empire of fear began to crack. 4 years, she had ruled through intimidation. Notices taped to doors. Letters slipped into mailboxes. Petty fines for grass an inch too long, or shutters a shade too dark. People complied not because they agreed, but because they feared the cost of defiance. Marjorie had crafted a kingdom where obedience was survival. But now, in one afternoon, that illusion collapsed. The neighbors had seen it with their own eyes. The inspectors siding with me, not her. The same inspectors she paraded around like trophies had pulled the rug from under her feet. And suddenly, the residents of the community began to wonder. If she was wrong about the pool, what else was she wrong about? The whispers shifted! Where once they whispered about me, they now whispered about her. Stories emerged like cracks in concrete. The time she'd find a veteran for a flagpole that wasn't regulation height. The time she ordered a family to repaint their door 3 times because the shade of blue clashed with community tones. The time she tried to stop a widow from planting roses in memory of her husband because roses warranty approved flora. The more they remembered, the less they respected her. And respect was the one currency Marjorie couldn't live without. By the next HOA meeting, the air in the clubhouse was different. No longer quiet. Submission there was tension, restless energy. Neighbors sat taller, spoke louder. A few even challenged her directly, asking why so much time and money had been wasted chasing a pool that was perfectly legal. Marjorie deflected, stumbled, redirected blame to confusing paperwork and community safety. But the veneer of authority had cracked. And through the cracks, her desperation showed. Meanwhile, I didn't need to speak a word. The pool spoke for me. Its calm surface reflected not just the sky, but the truth that the HOA's power only existed when unchallenged. And now, challenged, it was unraveling.